AI becoming a bigger part. So a question that a lot of you have is like how to stand out in all of this, especially as developers, when AI can code stuff, when people say we don't need software engineers, we have Claude code. So it becomes more important than ever to show off your projects in a creative manner and also efficiently use AI. So I'll share my experience with on both of these. So who am I? So my background is actually in chemistry. In 2022, while I was in grad school at the University of Utah, I joined the Entrepreneur Club and there decided, okay, my startup idea will be a grant writing assistant for academics because academics spend a lot of time writing grants. And I thought, okay, AI is on the rise, let me build that. That idea flopped, but that's like positioned me as someone like way early on the AI curve back in 2022, before all the AI hype, and that was even before GPT 3.5, and now we have GPT 5.3, so that's as a benchmark. Since then, I've lectured in Bangkok School, Latvijas Universitāte, and starting tomorrow also Riga Rāciņš University, digital transformations, AI and data, also standalone workshops, sometimes on creativity, creative thinking, and innovations. And currently, my main job is like in the State Administration and Regional Development Ministry, so I work on the AI Innovation Accelerator program for the public sector. Last summer, I graduated Start School. For those who don't know, that's the other building for Fluor. And right now, I'm also on the side running Delulu Solutions, which is an IT service company, and Digido, which is AI and automations for manufacturing companies. And so, I'm here talking about creativity. So, what are some? So, also, I've been called the harbinger of AI apocalypse. So there's this YouTuber, Sabine Hostenfelder. She released a video on like the AI bubble bursting last September, and since then has, I think, already over 300,000 views. And there's my LinkedIn mentioned there because at the time I said, okay, I'll do vibe coding cleanup, which at the time no one knew the term, but because more vibe code apps were popping up, I thought like vibe code debugging is going to be a thing. This video mention landed me even 2 clients. One I refunded, one I canceled because this is the pull request I was facing with just the code being an absolute nightmare to wrap up, and I realized, okay, it's easier to rewrite the whole thing than just trying to debug. So no more vibe coding cleanup, and I do not recommend that as a option, even though the opportunity is pretty tempting. So I've been working on some creative projects, so here are some insights into some that I've been recently working. So bottom left, I managed to go viral, so over 20K impressions on LinkedIn. I made a AI agent orchestration that, based on your query, finds the changes in legislation on that query. In a hackathon, I was also built, so this one was, the orchestration was built in 4 days. Then in 1 week, I built a platform that helps evaluate your code if there is potential for it to have an advantage on a quantum computer, and if yes, what that advantage might be. Recently, in 1 day, in Three.js and TypeScript, I built out this. This was mostly vibe code, basically 4-dimensional mind mapping tool. And then the 2 projects that I'm soon about to release is one, a solver for 5-dimensional chess. So if chess isn't complicated enough, then you can also travel in time with pieces and some other additional rules. That's 5-dimensional chess. And now I'm trying to develop an AI model to solve that. Interesting takeaways, but that's still in development. And the other is a wrapper for large language models to play Love Island episodes. Also, I'm going to publish that pretty soon. And so, technical. So what are we going to do today in particular, and what am I here to share? So I'll help you rewire how you look at problems and solutions so that next time when you want to start a new project, or you want to enhance your portfolio or present the things that you have in your portfolio in a more interesting way, or maybe you want to start a new project or sub-project for whatever you're doing, you can be a bit more creative than you think that you are. A few practical AI strategies, just because we're on the AI train, as I mentioned earlier. And essentially, I'll empower you to solve world hunger, inequality, prevent climate change, save the world, or at least have better projects than like Basecamp and Instagram clones. So to talk about developing creative projects, let's talk about like the classic product development guide. By the way, the slides, if you want, are available. In the end, you'll have my LinkedIn. I can also share my GitHub and just request, and I'll send you the slides. So the essential product development cycle is the first step is we have an idea, we research what the users want, we research what the market wants, then we iterate through it, and then we think of refinements. As the software engineers, sometimes it's not important as which problem to choose, because essentially if we bring it down to the technical foundations, it's a completely different problem, or something that sounds like from a business side complex might have a simple underlying mechanic under it to develop as software. So essentially for software, we don't want peace, we want more problems. And so we'll go through some frameworks on how to generate more, or either find more problems and generate more solutions for them. So to do that, we need to map what are we currently struggling with and why haven't we solved it. So the most common mental blocks to creativity is that, oh, I'm just not that creative, which we have to go over. And my goal of today is break through this block and show that creativity can be something that can be done through some frameworks, even though making minor increments to seemingly large problems. Someone has already done that. Again, we'll go through that, through like, oh, maybe the big problem, but there's always like niches or specifications that we can get into. That sounds stupid. The ideas I showed you, I'm pretty sure for some of you sound stupid. Even with a stupid idea, which was an agent orchestration to go through websites to get information out, which is definitely not the most efficient method, still drawn quite the attention. I was actually surprised how much attention it drew to it. So sometimes something that sounds stupid is actually what people want to see, and especially when there's so much slop floating around, some creativity and originality goes a long way. What will others think? That's something to overcome from a personal development side of things. This is not good enough. I'm pretty sure the code for most of my projects is suboptimal, but it's always the presentation, especially for non-technical founders, because I'm not here to talk you how to win interviews, especially the technical interviews, because frankly, I hadn't had a single one, but I managed to close software projects before even getting a single software certification. And today is not a good day for being creative. Again, with frameworks, we'll see how that works. And essentially, the last one is the oddest one out, that once you get into working with people, you see that people oftentimes try to make choices before generating ideas. And that's the thing that I want you to stop doing. And to do that, I need to talk a little bit about divergent and convergent thinking. So divergence and convergence, same as mathematically, we can apply this to creativity. So divergent thinking is when we create more and more choices that we can later choose from, and convergence is when we try to filter them out. So when we try to approach the problem space, what problem are we solving? The best method is to first create a large list of problems that we can approach and then filter them out. Now, since this is a software meetup, Frontend Meetup specifically, but everyone knows code, we can prove this mathematically. It's left as an exercise to the reader. But basically, if we can imagine that we have a limited amount of steps, of how much choices we can create and how much times do we need to prune those choices, then like if we say arrows moving aside is like making new choices, and arrows closing down is filtering them out. And we can mathematically prove that for those to cover the largest area, which we can say the entire problem space, so if we want to cover the largest area, if we go up that, like open, close, open, close, open, close, that will cover a smaller area than we first go entirely all in on opening and then entirely all in on closing. And so in design thinking and innovation consulting, if we apply this to both problems and solutions, it's called the double diamond method, where first we decide, we have some initial set of parameters or interests or topics or challenges that we want to solve, and then we try to go to the focused problem. So first we generate a large list of problems, and then we start to think, okay, what is actually applicable, what is actually the thing that we want to tackle, what is actually something that we can do, what is something that interests us, or we can team up with someone, and then we narrow down on the problem, and then we do the same process for a solution. Go crazy, go stupid, rockets, jets, private islands, roller coasters, and so on. But essentially, if we liberate ourselves and not limit ourselves, then we have more options to choose from. And somewhere between those wild ideas, there's something that might be more interesting to develop. So let's go through the practical frameworks for essentially exploring this part that is the divergence part, which is how do we generate lots of choices. And then I think the limiting part, like filtering part, is usually easier for people to do, but the hard part is to get yourself to be creative and also like squeeze out the creative juice out of the AI, because frankly, I haven't been able to like squeeze out as much creativity with these frameworks, even though the AI knows the frameworks that I'll show you well, and it can apply them well. It's still like always like, because there's this bias of the, like you always have some bias in the words you use, so it always tries to circle around the words and ideas that you give it, rather than going as crazy and stupid as it can. So the first framework is simple. You just need to know one word, which is why, and it's essentially called the 5 whys. You have a problem, okay, 5 whys. So there's not much people in this room. Okay, why is that? Well, it's because there's 5 events going on. So why is that? Oh, it's because like people lack social connection. Okay, why is that? Well, it turns out that people are spending too much time on their device and not socializing. Okay, now why is that? Well, it turns out that like devices have become an important part of our life. So, okay, now after 5 whys, we have some cause. Now, I'm improvising. And in this example, I came to the phone, okay, is it a problem I want to solve? Not really, but still, I do not cancel it out. I put it in a box, and we'll see later what we can do with it. But essentially, we get through this route, and sometimes the problem that we start from, and after 5 whys, we have a fundamentally different problem to solve. And so sometimes if we have a nudge, like I feel like there's a problem there, or I feel like there's something that needs solving, just going through the 5 whys creates something interesting. Sometimes, as in my example, you create something basic, but we'll see later what we can do even with the basic building blocks. So from Japanese engineers, they've developed this process a bit creatively. So if you look at Japanese designs, like I really like Japanese, like like brochures and pens and pencils and erasers. Like they have a fundamentally different design concept around them, because they, so in Japan in particular, a very popular framework for innovation is the fishbone diagram, which here is something, the part is produced in the wrong size. So if we look at the manufacturing environment, we can break down to various causes contributing that. So we can say, okay, which is the human part of contribution? Okay, so that from the people side, it can be an employee mistake, It can be a mistake in tuning. It can be a mistake in production procedure. And so these are fundamentally different questions that for some, like machine setting mistakes, okay, that might be a UX problem. So even if we have something like manufacturing and let's say a bolt factory, but like you have a friend who says, hey, I'm making these bolts in like huge amounts, but I cannot hire anyone to, I don't know, make sure that the bolts are produced the right size, then you as a software engineer can say, okay, so he has this problem that the parts produced in the wrong size. So let's look at, okay, what's the people issues? What's the environment? What's the method? And so also from this, so I'm here just like shooting ideas at you because some frameworks also for me, I use more often than the rest, but here's just like some reference points, and then either through the internet, like the same sources that the images come from, or talking to your LLM provides more than sufficient information. The goal is to know that you have to search and define the framework. So you can say, hey, break this down according to the fishbone diagram and illustrate it. And fishbone diagrams are actually one of the most reliable, I would say, out of all the frameworks, like for an AI to produce. Then mind mapping and associations. So if you still use pen and pencil, this is the perfect where you try to draw it out. What associations can you think of? So every programmer's first idea is to-do list. Okay, let's do a to-do list. So something as a to-do list as a project sounds bad, but okay, let's think about the to-do list from the thinking side of things. So what worries me? So my worry is that my memory is not good enough. So what emotions do I feel? So I feel frustration that the deadlines are approaching. So what aspirations I have? I want to be known as someone who gets their time checked. And so these all, if we map out these ideas, depending on what we're writing out, so this is a very good meta diagram because it also shows not only the concept of associations, but also which degrees to see. So first of all, the senses, seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, thinking, feeling. Also, it includes like what subcategories can we have. So something like this, if we have a problem, just going through this already generates 40 ideas. Some of them will overlap, but remember, first you go broad, then you filter out. So my rule of thumb is usually, if I think of something, just figure out 100 things and then narrow down. Surprisingly enough, 100 things takes less than an hour to figure out, like once you get your association muscle and creativity muscle and so on. Then my personal favorite is the scamper method. So as I mentioned previously, with the five whys, we didn't have an interesting result. Now the scamper method is essentially the thing that spices things up. So scamper is an acronym for 7 actions that you can take on an idea. So let's say we have the same boring idea. So I already forgot what I got through the 5 whys, but so let's do the good old boring to-do list. So with the to-do list, we have 7 actions we can do. Substitute. So okay, we can have a to-do list. We can substitute paper for digital. That's an idea. We can substitute the idea that it's a list of items to have it, okay, maybe it's a location of ideas in space, like similarly I showed with the mind mapping tool. So maybe it's a mapping of ideas in space. Maybe we can combine with something else, like something that you're familiar with. For some it might be sports, for some it might be, I know, for me it's usually, I love Survivor, the reality TV show. So every time I think, okay, what mechanics from like game shows can I add as a gamification mechanic? So if I want something like a to-do list, can I make it like a competitive? Can I make it like elimination? Can I make it like also some factor, maybe some something like a where they have this booth where they share the thoughts they don't share with the rest of the competitors, but they show to the viewers. Maybe I can introduce that mechanic, and that's already a more interesting project, even for something as boring as a as a to-do list. Similarly, adapt. Maybe we can adapt for some new context. Maybe it's an implementation checklist for the manufacturing company. Modify again, larger, smaller. So really recommend exploring. This can take a boring idea, and you have basically the tools to switch and turn it up to have a large list of ideas. So these are 7 letters. If you even try to make 5 modifications for an idea with each letter, that gives you already 35 ideas. So just using these frameworks, 40 plus 35, you see how 100 ideas is not even that scary. And somewhere from there, I bet at least one idea is like novel or interesting or worth exploring. This will make people go, oh, this is something more interesting than the stuff we see usually. And then the final, it's just like reverse thinking, like how do we make everything worse? And then sometimes it's easier, like especially if you're a negative person, this doesn't work, this I don't like it. And okay, how do you make things worse? And then make an idea from there. In software, that usually ends up cybersecurity solutions, because if you make, okay, how do you make this worse? It's usually, okay, you find the problem, you find how to amplify it, and then you think how to prevent it. And then there's, okay, how it's basically a cybersecurity or, again, red team solution that you've come up with, which if you choose your problem specifically enough, or especially if you have a domain background, it's also very worthwhile. And so some of you are like, okay, these are frameworks. Can we have some sources or some websites that can also help or makes us draw inspiration from stuff other people do? So first of all, is it like from your personal life, any pain that you might encounter? If you're facing this problem, large probability that someone else is facing that problem as well, right? And so essentially it's like, how can we, if we can solve this for ourselves, then most likely someone is going to will to pay for that or will find this interesting. Bank account history, browser history, same. If you search for things, then probably these are worth exploring and worth building out. Then there's also this type of like seeing trends, like what's trending on Reddit, what's trending in blogs, and then seeing how can we improve existing solutions and how can we make something that works in a more interesting way, or again, apply Scamper to turn it interesting. And then, of course, AI brainstorming. Now let's get to some actual useful sites that bring good ideas. So one is Google Trends. It's like these two, Google Trends and Reddit, are more data-driven, where you have to do more research. For example, this is r/side project. As you can see, refresh straight from today. They have something, oh, I built a free passport photo tool because I got charged 50 euros at Photo Studio for a JPEG. So transforming photos to like passport appropriate format. How many of you can relate? Like having to run to get your passport like photo in the booth. So very simple, neat, that most can relate. I certainly can. Instant remote control for shared spaces. So these you can think automatic chessboard. So also some engineering products. Tool to bypass invasive face scan. So Discord, like all the privacy settings, getting more trendy. So something to overcome that. Yes. And then some more interesting is like how to get like exact startup ideas. Like my favorite is to browse Idea Browser from time to time. So I forgot I already had that. So Idea Browser is a list of already researched ideas. So what they do is that they have these ideas, and basically if you check the idea of the day, then it's free, but if you try to look to the historic archive, you have to pay. But sometimes just getting on the idea of the day is very worthwhile to explore. So this is the idea of the day for today. So build site update agent for post-construction cleaning crews. I have no idea what I just said, but here it explains. New buildings need cleaning before anyone moves in. And so basically a tool for that. So they've already done the research of like, hey, here the trend is trending upwards. Here's what people are saying on Reddit. Here's how you could already structure an offer. Here's why it's interesting. And basically that Here's some Facebook groups, Reddit, and so on that talk about it. And here's like some already direction on how can you format the idea with the market research already done for you. Very interesting, and sometimes the ideas are very, like not something you would think about, but sometimes these are so niche that it's like, you think as a software, like someone who understands software, it's like, it's not difficult to make. And so the idea is just like finding someone with the industry knowledge to get the business side, or maybe even just try out building the solution, seeing where it takes you. So here, obviously the past ones are paid, but at least you can see the names of the ideas. So community for dog owners, tracking health and supplement. Super niche, but the market research shows there is potential. Body composition app that replaces clinic scan, so they have this setup that can scan your body mass index. Way to automate that. Real-time race tracking platform for endurance events. AI to help law students ace the LSAT. Visual progress tracking for boutique fitness coaches. So super niche ideas. And you can see for some, they're trending upwards. Some are minor increments, but like with new technology, it's getting easier to implement. And then also some idea picker and starter story. So starter story was just acquired by, if I recall correctly, HubSpot. But starter story is just, let's say we are travelers and digital nomads. We can also see what people have built and approximate revenue numbers for the things that are being built. And we can also see maybe built with what stack. So let's say we are, okay, I'll see if there's some framework or programming language instead of like Django. I think I saw Django, I lost it already. If anyone sees like, PHP. So, it's a paid feature. So stack is like a paid feature, but we can filter like, let's say by revenue. Oh, they paywalled everything. No, they didn't, or did. Anyhow, so we can see some ideas, say approximate revenue numbers. Of course, these are specific, and the question is, are they inflated or not? But still some inspiration to draw from. And if we have, then there's the other, that's idea picker, which is also similar to starter story that does similar idea browsing. And then for those who are more into startups, then probably, and you've heard of like Hacker News and Product Hunt. So both sites where a lot of people inform about their new projects and what they've built and try to build the initial momentum around the products. Also some gems always present every day. So any questions this far on like, you can ask for the presentation afterwards. I can send it to you.
Can you give us some example from the scalpel project you took and then you applied it, and then like some features you developed that were used by people or solved the problem creatively?
I mean, this one came from the idea, I know it was in my notebook for a few months. The Love Island model was something, so I saw a YouTube video saying that was AIs playing Mafia, and it was basically large language models, like every large language model playing Mafia. But I realized they don't actually hook up the large language models, but they like write chats, and they like also improvise some stuff, so it's not exactly the AIs maintaining memory. But from the stuff I know about agents, I thought like this should be possible, that like agents play independently in a game setting. So I tested this out, and I think it's pretty cool. And I think when it drops, it's going to be impressive. This one, so the law search tool, that was mostly done through 6 people independently told me they have this problem. So that wasn't a hard one to identify. And that was just like, okay, let me just build this out. And same for the other, the last one, which is the mind mapping tool. I had a very specific workshop on creativity I had to give, where I had to tie in the concept of fractals and dimensions and stuff. So yeah, so that like came, okay, how can I like create a tool for this whole process? Needless to say, not much activity, but I think this is like that's one of the coolest ones, even though it's like the most simple one. Like it's simple and elegant.
Maybe regarding these ones, how does scaling work? As they are developed so quickly, like I don't know, security risks, potential other issues, load balancing.
So that depends, because some are just solely as proof of concept. Like the bottom row, like for this one, I just ran some agents, got some feedback. Essentially, I realized it's not scalable because with the agent, like the agent approach just doesn't make sense for the problem. But this I claim to still be the first open source agent orchestration in Latvian and in Latvia. So it was more of like a benchmark thing. For the rest, again, it depends on the purpose. Of course, for commercial projects you want. And I will show some AI strategies that work better than vibe coding in that regard, at least from what I've noticed. But yeah, it's again a matter of like building and scaling. I can show, so that's the second part that I'll go into right now. So, very good transition. So a lot of talks are right now about vibe coding, where you type your prompt and the AI builds the whole thing around for you. I had the experience of dealing with vibe code cleanup, and I'm not a fan of vibe coding because eventually you realize it's easier to start over than trying to fix it. And so, however, for prototyping, it's still the best approach. But I think as a developer, if you have the skills, then it's better to set up the project in a way where scaling grows in a maintainable way. So that's where I jump into the second part of my presentation, where we go from vibe coding, where we just tell AI, let it rip, or code monkey, to AI-assisted engineering, which is how do we use AI to test, to help us like build in a secure, maintainable, performant and scalable way. Even though, small caveat, I didn't have much projects to like so detailed where performance was of such essence, but I think the general principles still hold true. So right now, the key thing, as the large language models are growing more powerful, then essentially we are moving away from prompt engineering, which is, okay, how do we say this idea so an LLM understands it as best as possible, to context engineering, which is how do we provide enough information for the AI to build out the system in the most scalable way, and also in a way that applies to our needs, and also doesn't become a burden later. So how do we craft the context? Now, some materials say about like the agentic setup, like agents MD, rules MD, cursor MD, and so on. I've seen some articles and videos that it might not be as efficient as claimed. So again, it's a field that's developing so fast that essentially it's very hard to keep track on what is still working and what isn't. Same with like context engineering is like, I don't think context engineering will go away. I mean, the principles of prompt engineering still hold true, but now, like especially with the thinking models, if you write a more general instruction, then the thinking model will refine it and do the prompt engineering for you, so it passes it to the model so it understands best. Like I'm focusing very little on prompt engineering. I think it's still relevant for smaller models, but with smaller models, again, if you have agentic orchestration, you have a more powerful model hand off the task to a smaller model, then it's on the first model to like optimize the prompt. So again, it loses the necessity, but the fundamental principles still hold true, and I don't think will go away. The question is, do we need to apply them every single time? So essentially, once I have the idea plotted out, so I use some business frameworks to plot out the business idea, then essentially I use a already pre-tuned assistant to help me develop the software architecture, because it's very convenient, and I don't know if you really love writing like directory structures and data structures and plant UML diagrams, when it's easier to, hey, build this out for me and then redact it so it applies to whatever is more interesting. With prompt engineering, sometimes the good old trick of like, hey, you're a software engineer at Google, help craft project plans. If I'm like want to build extra fast or something like YOLO prototype, then just copy paste this and then let it rip. But then it's more vibe coding. With software assistant, so software architect, let's say we use the so where did it go? Oh, so it's here. So with the assistant, it's just a ChatGPT assistant that's fine-tuned. And let's say, okay, create a design for a Uber-like app. Well, I just used, because for time's sake, just build it out. So first it helps build out, okay, what is the background? What are the high-level requirements? Then it goes through feature list, what are essential features? Then it helps craft, again, the directory structure, data structure, and so on. And essentially that helps provide context for the model, because first of all, it generates it fast. Second of all, it generates in a way that both it understands and you understand. And essentially you can proceed with that faster. So I'm not gonna go through, but I'm gonna leave a link for you to play around. I think this is still the best one. If you don't want to use ChatGPT, I have a prompt that does that works similarly to this one, yielding similar results. That works well for, well, it's a prompt, so it works for any large language model. And also it's good to, like, you can, going through the architecture, say, okay, don't use this, use these frameworks, use these tools, because it always tries to use the AI default ones, TypeScript, Supabase, whatever else. So if you have your own presets, you can easily overwrite, and it will, again, adjust everything according to that. Then the second part is adding a tasks.md file. So I prefer to context engineer with 3 files. So one is just the general project description, where I just write out what is being built, more from a business side of view. So the concept is not important, but this is a project I decided not to pursue. I still have the domain for this one, but I have no idea what to do, and its domain ranking is super poor for obvious reasons. But essentially, we have a business overview that we also have to turn into a technical overview. So I think I already removed the technical overview for this project, and then we use that to generate a tasks.md file. So what is a tasks.md file? So a tasks.md file is basically the way I set it up. A tasks.md file is purely just using a reference tasks.md file. So if you want, I can get this exact tasks.md file, and when you run a project, it's saying, hey, here are my text specifications. Here's a example tasks.md file. Generate a similar tasks.md file for this project. So what it yields is essentially a roadmap where the entire build is divided into small phases, as you would normally develop a project. So it breaks it down. Super well into smaller bits, and essentially every bit is like a subtask. So you can have both the overview and then decide, okay, do I do this task? Do I delegate it to the AI? And also keep track of the project. So this is the default for a Rust application, because I just thought I could YOLO on Rust. Very bad idea. But I think now it might be better, because this was about it was last year. But essentially, you can build it out, add some, refine it as smaller tasks, and then you can either delegate it step by step, while giving it full context or again, implementing yourself, and you have the same visual understanding for yourself. And also what's a good thing is it's compact enough for the AI, so it doesn't bloat the context, because always with every time working with AI, the issue is always like context bloat, because once the AI has its, the large language model has its context full, like its performance drops drastically. So it's always important to have it tidy. I don't believe in like super optimizing the prompts, like where you try to write in the shortest form possible. I know some people do that, and sometimes in production it works, but we're not talking about production level. So use that, copy the task list, have the task list develop as a document that you can then reuse, and then you can refine the task list to your liking. Usually I go through a few iterations because it doesn't copy exactly the format, but overall the task list has been super helpful in structuring projects, and also remembering about safety issues, and also letting AI like maintain enough context. And then again, we can easily read through and review it as humans. Now this is for Copilot configuration. I've left this reference, so it's a rules file for Cursor, where basically we structure rules for the Cursor Copilot. I don't use Cursor, I use GitHub Copilot, as you might have noticed, but essentially for the rules file, it's just words. You can rewrite the rules file, and I just like the fact that here it has a large directory, like 4 various frameworks. So someone else has already optimized. So if we work Solid.js, if we work Svelte, if we work PHP, if we work some, like, depending on the testing framework, front-end framework, back-end framework, there are already agent rules optimized for that framework. We can use our Copilot to say, okay, rewrite this so it's not Cursor, but GitHub Copilot, or the GitLab Copilot, or whatever else you're using. And so this helps, again, to navigate the Copilot in a more maintainable way, so it also knows what the optimal tailoring configurations are, what for testing is, and you don't have to like write it yourself, optimize prompts, and so on. Then another useful tool, if you're working within other repositories or open source, or sometimes need to give information on a repository to the LLM. Like right now, you can just copy a link and it understands it super well, but it's not the most efficient way, because you're losing tokens on calls, you're losing tokens for the LLM to read through the incoming request, so you're losing tokens on that to process, to think. And so there are already ready-made context generators where you can take the repository you're interested in, and basically, like, let's say here's the example repository of Flask, and essentially we try to compress its context into a more compact way to the LLM. So instead of copying a link, we can say, hey, here's this repository, here is a file with its directory structure, summary, and files content, and that is more efficient from a token point of view, also more overviewable for the model, because otherwise it has to go and retrieve and do extra calls and so on. And so you're maintaining the context and maintaining tokens. So here it also says estimate the amount of tokens. So you can also preserve those when giving it to your agent. So very efficient. Alternative approach is used by the creators of Devin. So does anyone still remember Devin over here? The so-called software engineer killer that I haven't heard in like a long time. However, they've still built out the context generator, which is also, we give a repository. So let's say Playwright repository, and basically has it sorted out as documentation. And if I recall correctly, then there's also somewhere there a llms.txt file, and also you can talk to it like a in a chat interface. So also, if you maybe want some specific parts hand over to the LLM, this is also efficient. Or just if you want to overview the repository. So I don't remember which one, but one of them, if it's open source, then it's free, and if it's paid, and then if it's private, then there's some limitations. So for, if I recall correctly, then if you only interested in open source code, then both of those are basically free for you. Yes, and my time is approaching to the end. So there are a bunch of just Copilot prompt best practices and prompt strategies. So if you're interested, I can just forward, because sometimes these are just some basic commands to, hey, don't code, tell me what to do, to, hey, grade the project, review it. Just some useful prompts that I use from various sources. I think none of them are, well, the first one probably is written by me, and the rest are from various sources. However, I really like this from Desktop Commander. Interestingly enough, when I made this presentation, they no longer had this in their prompt library, which is a shame, because this is one of the most used prompts, which basically analyze technical debt. So what I like to do is, like, after every phase or two, run additional prompts. Yes, it burns through the tokens. Yes, it takes time, but essentially do a technical debt analysis and prevent issues right away. So if, again, the earlier you prevent technical debt, the better you are. And if you structure the prompt and context well enough, ARs are very good at spotting and remedying technical debt. And the remedies are usually usually optimal, which again, maybe not production level, but like, well, not like enterprise grade level, but like production level that you can host a website and not be afraid. For those, it's very optimal. Now, small note on models. I mostly used Opus 4.5. Now recently I'm using Opus 4.6, obviously. And most prompts work best, in my experience, just with Opus 4.5 or 6. But Opus does a very good job at analyzing technical debt. Yes, and then finally some additional resources if you're interested. So repository of various AI tools. I use a lot the second one, which is alternative to .NET, because every now and then a lot of AI tools pop up. How do we find which is best, what even the alternatives are? It just shows, hey, if I have Slack, what are the alternatives to Slack? If I have this tool, what are alternatives to it? Especially now, it's when there's so much out there, helps navigate through things. An article on AI-assisted coding, if I recall, it was quoted also by Andrei Karpati, so also a very good read. And then finally, if the ideas are not enough, then one option is just where are more. So there's a directory of something. So directory of ideas. So directory of directories. So where to find directories on various ideas. Also sometimes an interesting rabbit hole. So also you can find the various loads of ideas on very specific domains. But that's it for me. So feel free to connect to LinkedIn or any other platforms. Usually I go LinkedIn, even though I know for developers that's not the most popular choice. But either way, happy to answer any questions or go into more detail about this stuff.